And I kept thinking, people have no idea how much of our lives are affected by how we approach drugs and addiction.
Yes.
It affects everything from educational opportunity. You can have that taken away from you. If you have a drug conviction, you're not eligible for certain loans or grants. Even low-level drug convictions, we think, well, maybe a little slap on the wrist is going to help someone. Even a misdemeanor on your record has a lifetime negative impact on your income production. If you have a felony on your record, your lifetime income drops in half. And here's the thing.
Because most companies don't hire felons.
Yeah,
right.
they do it.
1 in 10 Mississippians has a felony on their record.
Wow.
That's I wouldn't have guessed that high.
Yeah.
It is shocking. So we have 1 in 10 has a felony. 1 in 4 has a criminal conviction of some kind. That's mind-boggling. And we talk about
Do
workforce.
You mean drug conviction?
No,
or just
not
period?
necessarily.
Okay.
Yeah, the statistics don't
Break it down.
don't break it down. Yeah. But when you look at like what was the original reason people were arrested, even if they end up getting kind of caught in the cycle, drug convictions are like the easiest possible way to get arrested. I have a friend who was arrested he had an empty bag that he had bought $8 worth of heroin in. The bag was empty and he got a felony on his record for that because it was residue. And so you even think of things like that. It's like, this is a lifelong impact for him over something really small,
bag,
small. Yeah.
He
So I started to,
He should have called Taylor and Cox.
Right.
there you go. So as I started to learn, learning some things like that, and you go, whoa, we're walking around in a world that people don't have any idea what is actually happening as a result of how many people are getting put in jails and prisons for drug possession. Drug possession is the top reason why people get put in prison in Mississippi. Now, there's people that get put in there for other things,
I believe it.
but drug possession, we're not talking trafficking, we're not talking sales. This is possession, the number one reason why people get incarcerated. So I'm learning about this, and I wonder, is anybody else in Mississippi interested in this? So I hosted a book discussion, and I used Johann Hari's book, Chasing the Scream. It was like the best thing that I had read on my own learning journey, and people came. So there was 12 people at the first discussion. Then I had one a few months later. There was 24 people there.
This would have been about 5 or 6 years ago?
This was in 2017.
Okay. So maybe put it out through social media or just your small
Yeah. It was really like invite my family and invite like anybody that had ever commented on a Facebook post I made about this issue, which wasn't that many people.
Right.
Got to start somewhere.
You got to start somewhere. Yes, you got to start somewhere. So did that, and they just kept growing. And then I had a dad who had lost his son to a heroin and fentanyl overdose. He invited me to come and do one in Hattiesburg. So he invited his community, went there and hosted one of those discussions. It was a packed house in one of the restaurants there. And it just kept growing, became a 501c3 as we, and I say we, because there was always other advocates that were part of this, whether or not they eventually became part of End It for Good's team, or just people that wanted to see this conversation happen. And it was happening in Mississippi. We're the most conservative religious state, year after year, we're like right up there with Alabama.
That's right.
And people were seeing this isn't an issue of like progressive. This is like, how do we help people? And I would say, I'm still conservative and still a Christian. I would say, I think this is actually, when we look at outcomes, it's a more conservative approach than what we have been doing, because it is helping more people stay alive. It's helping families stay together and be healthier. It's helping communities have less crime. We haven't gotten into how that would happen yet, but there are so many angles of this that improve not just the life of the person who's struggling with an addiction, but the rest of the community who's not using it all. All of our lives are impacted.
And resources.
Yeah. And so what keeps me going still today is this deep belief that when we look at the world, we all want to find big levers of how to make it better. Like, it's awesome to change one life, but if you can change 1 million, that's even better. Let's pull the big switch. Yeah. And so the more I've learned, I have become convinced that this is one of the biggest switches that we could pull. It impacts not just our country, it impacts countries all over the world. It impacts immigration. It impacts why people want to leave countries where cartels have taken over. Right. And so there's so much impact. tends to be that the most vulnerable people experience the worst of the impact. So for me, as somebody who is thinking about not just how does the world work for people with resources, but how does it work best no matter what family you're born into, no matter what opportunities you have, how can we make the best chance for you to live an amazing life and contribute to society? I think this is one of those issues.
I don't disagree.
I like it too. Yeah.
It impacts, like you said, a lot of people, not just in Mississippi, but
Yeah. And it's through the whole gamut. I mean, you could be really, really poor and come from a really poor household, or you could be really, really rich and fall into the same boat.
make it probably even easier if you're super rich, because
then you got it right in front of you.
Yeah. So you started to host the discussions, you'd say, started the nonprofit, and then what? Like you're still learning, right? You're still trying to figure out developing, like, would you say like your own thesis of how things should be, or your own plan where change should start and how?
So it was kind of started with those book discussions. And then at the end of 2018, I got a invitation to go speak to a group of community leaders in Jackson. They had heard about these discussions that I was doing, and they were like, come and tell us your spiel. And I was like, well, the spiel is you got to read this whole book, and then I'm going to come and lead a discussion with you. And not surprisingly, they're like, we don't want to read the book. We just want you to come.
Give me the cliff notes.
Give me the cliff notes. Yeah. And so I thought, well, this is terrifying. I don't know. Like, I have not done that. I haven't put it into my own words. I haven't consolidated this down. I've just been like taking this other resource and pointing people to it, Q&A. So I thought, okay, but I don't want to turn down any opportunities. So I'm just going to do this. So I made my own PowerPoint. I'm not a designer. I just tried to think through, how can I make what makes sense to me? How can I convey that in some way? And so I did that and went and presented there. Serendipitous events of one of the people who was there that day was friends with somebody that was on the TEDx committee. And there was a TEDx conference in Jackson, and 6 weeks later, and he went to her and he said, I just saw this presentation. You really need to invite her to present this as a TEDx talk. And so they reached out to me. I sent in a proposal for it.
So you